Warning: this video contains mature content such as cartoon murder and cartoon blood. If any of those make you uncomfortable, then click off this video now. Also, this video will be a spoiler-free review of all three games. Without any further warning, please enjoy. Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Cake, and today I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite game franchises that I personally think is criminally underrated. That franchise is Danganronpa. Danganronpa is a visual novel series that's based around a psychotic teddy bear that puts 16 high schoolers against each other in a game of life or death. Think of it more as Phoenix Wright mixed with the Hunger Games. Let me preface this video by saying that I plan on playing Danganronpa for 2 years, but I never got around to it because I never played a visual novel, and I'm certainly not an anime fan, but I'm really glad I ended up picking it up. Without any further ado, let me tell you why I think you should play Danganronpa. Around 2009, developer named Spike Chunsoft saw how well the PSP was selling in Japan and wanted to develop a low-budget game for it. That is when they started development on a game called Distrust, which later became known as Danganronpa. After a year of development, Danganronpa finally came out on November 25, 2010, exclusively in Japan on the PSP. But enough about development, let me tell you about the actual game. Danganronpa takes place at a high school called Hope's Peak Academy. To get into this high school, you have to be recruited into it. How do you get recruited, you may ask? To get in, you need to have an ultimate talent. Basically, you need to be the best at one thing to get invited. In Danganronpa, you play as Makoto Naegi, who was selected via a random raffle and given the tagline Ultimate Luck. The game starts outside Hope's Peak High, and you are super optimistic to get your school year started. As you enter the building, you pass out and wake up on a desk. You leave the classroom and meet 14 other students that were enrolled here. Here you meet people like the Ultimate Pop Sensation, Ultimate Gambler, Ultimate Baseball Star, and Ultimate Fashionista. A monitor tells all the students to meet in a gym, and when they do, they are greeted with Monokuma, or as the leaderboard puts it,
for Monokuma, Monokuma's Monokumastin, Monokuma's Monokuma.
How'd you mess up the pronunciation so bad? Did you even play the game? Here he lays down the rules for this high school. In order to get out of here, you need to commit a murder. Once you've commit the murder and 3 people have seen the body, everyone has a limited time to find evidence and make a case together. Once time's up, the class trial is held, in which everyone talks it out and uses their evidence to find out who the blackened is. The blackened is just the murderer, by the way. If they find out who the blackened is, then the blackened gets executed, but if they guess wrong, then everyone but the blackened dies and the blackened graduates. The game consists of 2 sections, Daily Life and Deadly Life. In Daily Life, you get to go around and talk to other characters to progress the story. You also get a limited time called Free Time, in which you get to go around the school and do whatever you want, whether it's talking to different characters or going to the Mono machine to spend your Mono coins in order to get gifts to give to people. The other half is Deadly Life. This happens once a murder has occurred, and you're tasked with finding clues that may assist in the class trial. Once time's up, you start the class trial, a big debate where you can use the points you gather to refute anyone else's points. You do this by firing truth bullets at the orange text in their statements. There are also minigames you play throughout the class trial. The first one is Hangman's Gambit, where you need to connect letters to make a clue. The next one is Bullet Time Battle. This is a rhythm minigame where you put together your final argument. The last one is Closing Argument. This is where you put all the pieces of evidence together to show one person has to be the culprit. This is typically done in a comic book style, and I personally really like the look of it. Okay, now I'm going to spoil the first chapter of this game. There's 6 chapters in total, and I'm only spoiling the first murder case. If you aren't okay with this, skip to the timestamp on the screen now. Are we good? Cool. Once everyone hears all the rules for this game in the gym, Junko Enoshima, the Ultimate Fashionista, breaks rule number 5. Violence against Headmaster Monokuma is strictly prohibited. When she pushes him to the ground, this happens.
Violence against Headmaster Monokuma is not allowed! You violated a school regulation! I invoke the mighty summon spell! Help! To me, godly spear Gunyear!
This wasn't supposed to. Why me?
Yeah, she freaking dies. Anyways, after everyone dismisses from the gym, you meet up with Sayaka. She talks about how you were both in the same middle school together but never talked to each other because you always thought that she was too popular since she is the ultimate pop sensation. The night passes and the next day Monokuma introduces motive videos that basically show that something terrible has happened to people close to you and the only way to save them is to graduate. Sayaka freaks out and runs into the halls. Later that night, she comes to your room and asks if you're okay with switching rooms for the night because she didn't feel safe in her own room. You agree, and the next morning you go to the cafeteria where everyone is supposed to eat breakfast together, but Sayaka isn't there. In a panic, you run to your room and... yeah, she's dead as well. You go around collecting clues, and once the trial starts, you put all the pieces together. Sayaka invited someone else to your room with the intention to kill them and frame you as the murderer, but when she attacked, the culprit grabbed a fake sword in her room and fought back. Sayaka was hit with the fake wooden sword and the strike broke her wrist, making her drop the knife. She ran into the bathroom and locked the door. The killer forced the door open and stabbed Sayaka with the kitchen knife. With Sayaka's last few breaths, she wrote a message in blood on the wall behind her. 11037. The killer cleaned up the scene and tried burning the blood-covered shirt, but the incinerator was blocked off. In order to open it, they threw a crystal ball with pinpoint accuracy at the button to open it. Part of the shirt that was thrown burned off and fell out of the incinerator. Finally, you found out that the code 11037 upside down really spelled Leon, ultimate baseball star. While I would argue Chapter 1 was one of the stronger chapters in Danganronpa, but it still sets a good example for what's to come in future chapters. Overall, I would say Danganronpa 1 is my favorite out of the 3 games because how much of an experience it was for me. The only downside to Danganronpa 1 would be Chapter 5. The trial was really confusing and left a bad taste in my mouth. Even though Danganronpa 1 came out for English-speaking audiences in 2014, I didn't get around to playing it until March 18th, 2019. I no-lifed it when I got it, putting 30 hours in it in 3 days. I then bought Danganronpa 2 right after I beat it. Danganronpa 2 was weird for me at first. I really didn't like the setting of an island, because I felt that a high school was a much more unique setting for a killing game, but I tried to remain optimistic. I also wasn't a fan of Monami. She's kind of a counter to Monokuma in the second game, but I never found her character arc that interesting. She really didn't get that interesting until the end of the game. It also didn't help that the first 2 chapters were really slow, and the trials weren't that interesting, but once we got to the 3rd chapter, things started to pick up. Characters grew and started to feel like actual high school kids, the plot was getting more and more interesting, and the pacing got better. I think the first 2 chapters of Danganronpa 2 took me around 4 days to complete, and after that, I started to play the game more and more till I beat it on April 3rd, 2019. While I will say that the ending is just as good as the first game, the pacing and boring setting of the second game are some drawbacks. Thankfully, I would say gameplay was better, and the improved minigames and new features added to the class trials were really helpful. It was still a great game, but I would say it's probably the weakest out of the 3 in the Danganronpa series. Next, we have Danganronpa V3. Notice the V in there? You see, this is where things get complicated. First came the Japanese exclusive game Danganronpa in 2010. Then, Danganronpa 2 came out exclusively to Japan in 2012. Then, a company made an anime with the plot of the first game in 2013. If you really want to, you could just watch the anime without actually playing the first game, but that would do a huge disservice to the first game. The anime lacks so much detail since they tried to cram a 30-hour game into a 6-hour anime. After that came the English translation of Danganronpa 1 and 2 called Danganronpa Reloaded, which came out in 2014 for PC, PS4, and PS Vita. Originally, Danganronpa 1 and 2 were PSP exclusives. After Danganronpa Reloaded, there was a unique Danganronpa anime that came out called Danganronpa 3, which was supposed to conclude the story of Danganronpa 1 and 2, otherwise known as the Hope's Peak arc. This anime was really 2 animes that come together into a 3rd one. You're supposed to watch Danganronpa 3 Future Arc Episode 1, then Danganronpa 3 Despair Arc Episode 1, then Future Side Episode 2, and so on until you've watched all the episodes of both. Then, you watch Danganronpa 3 Hope Arc, which is really just one episode that concludes everything, and then boom, you've just consumed everything related to the Hope's Peak arc, except for a spin-off game that I'm not going to talk about. Okay, now we can talk about Danganronpa V3, the game. They named it V3 to distinguish itself from Danganronpa 3, the anime. Danganronpa V3 follows a completely new plotline, so technically you don't need to play the first 2 to understand it, but the ending may be a little confusing if you don't, so I'd really recommend that you play the first 2 before you play 3. Anyways, now that that's out of the way, let me talk about the actual game. Danganronpa V3 is a great game. The first chapter's trial may be one of the best in the whole series. It starts the game off on a high note, and chapter 2 continues that. Then, chapter 4 puts a really cool twist on the game that I won't spoil. Unfortunately, Danganronpa V3's ending isn't the best. I wouldn't say it was terrible, but it was definitely too over the top for the series. Overall, Danganronpa V3's story and gameplay makes up for its not ideal ending. I would say it's in the middle of Danganronpa 1 and 2 for me. Well, that's it. All Danganronpa games reviewed. Pretty much spoiler free. If you like a good story in video games and you don't mind reading, then I think you will really enjoy the Danganronpa series just as much as I did. Each game takes around 30 hours to beat, but is incredibly fun along the way. Thank you guys so much for watching my review of the Danganronpa series. If you enjoyed this video and want to hear more of my comprehensive reviews, please leave a like on this video. It means a lot to me. Also, leave a comment down below with what you think of the series, and if you're going to pick it up after hearing my thoughts on it. I would love to know. Thanks so much for watching. I'm GamerSysCake, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.
Danganronpa.